Good day and welcome to Try Stuff. My name is Tyson Villeneuve.
I am Erica.
And I'm Kelsey Villeneuve.
And we are here today to discuss our journey from Sunset of Leivnos to War for Bryndor. So if you are new, then some of this might not make a whole lot of sense, but we'll get into the preface of that. So if you've been following us for a while, we're back with a spiritual successor for a project. And so what we're going to discuss in this podcast is how we got from that point to this point after our, multiple year hiatus, I guess. So, I guess to just as an intro, I do art and programming for the game, and most of my art is on the 3D texture side. And Erica does the card art.
That's right.
And Kelsey is on programming and also the operations, marketing, and all that kind of crap. So let's take a look at our first point here. So we want to give a wee bit of a history of Sunset of Leivnos. So if you've been following us for a while, you'll know some of this. We made the joke that two people were watching our podcast the whole time, and so for the two people out there, you'll have to suffer through the history of this. But for all the rest of you, our original version of this game, which looks quite a bit differently, was called Sunset of Leivnos, and it started. How long ago do you think? Comfortably 12 or 13 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been over a decade.
Maybe even longer. And so Eric and I worked together for quite a while back then, and we got into this whole thing about, hey, I love your art, and I was wanting to make a game, and so we connected to start that, and it was a game inspired by Romance of Three Kingdoms and Gemfire. That was kind of the initial idea, and we chose it because the art was not animated. We could make a whole strategy game without really worrying about animated art. It was just 2D, and so it worked really good with your art style. And we did physical paper and pen, which we're still doing.
Yep.
And so we started down this journey, and we did a whole series of podcasts and updates, and really worked on it for like two years, I think. But it never came to fruition, and so part of this discussion is like, what happened, right? Because there's a lot of factors. So let's start with you. What was the biggest reason you think that Sunset of Leivnos didn't make it?
I would say the biggest factor was us just not being clear on how much work it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because we had made a plan after plan after plan on the type of game, the style of game, the components of the game, and made lots of estimates as to how long we thought those elements were going to take. And they all ended up taking 10 times longer than we thought they would, mainly because we were doing it in our spare time, but also because the market for games changed so drastically and so quickly from the time we started to the time that we actually got really serious about it. So, because we had started this journey with the intention of making an iPad game.
Yes, and we did. We had a run-on iPad version of it.
So, and that was around the time when Angry Birds was very popular, and it seemed like that was the place to be. And very quickly, two things happened. Our game became bigger than just an iPad game, and also iPad games kind of went out of fashion. So I'm not sure they went out of fashion as much as they shifted to like this pay-to-win idea, this monetization method, and all that stuff, and coupled with the notion of shovelware, because at that point we were out of this era of you could be found if your game was good, and we were just not convinced that it would succeed. But you're kind of right, because the tablets have kind of died. It went to cell phones.
Yeah, cell phones really do everything basically that they did.
Mm-hmm. And so there was no real market for it. So the PC move made a lot of sense back then. But then the flip side is that we're like, well, now we don't have any of the limitations of the iPad, which had super low memory, super low space. I remember really struggling with memory management with the early games, and this was so long ago that you could barely do anything. And even like a high resolution image now was it. You get one, or I'm exaggerating, but it was pretty significant. And then when we moved to PC, we're like, oh, no limitations, right? Well, for all intents and purposes, right? So, yeah, I would say that was a big one, right? The scope creep stuff too.
Well, and I think we just got really overwhelmed and also excited about all of the things we could do and all of the sort of dreams for the game that we could then fulfill.
Yeah.
And so we really leaned into that hard, and, you know, to our detriment. I mean, if we had a lot more time and resources, we probably could have accomplished that, but we didn't. So, so yeah, that's where the overwhelming part came in.
Kel, what do you think? What's your kind of big takeaway from Sunset of Leivnos?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously all those points are good. Yeah, we did all had full-time jobs that weren't, like mine in particular had nothing to do with program or anything, so I wasn't gaining any skills that would help better the project or anything. So there was that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, we had her blocked out, but here she is. So I think the biggest thing for me was, like, I had done a lot of programming before. Like, my whole career has been programming, but Unity itself and game development itself was a bigger beast than I think I appreciated at the time. And so one of the biggest mistakes I think we made was not leveraging the editor and the Unity system itself. So this is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but we basically created an entirely code-based game and didn't touch the editor. Like, if you open the project, there was one object, and it loaded everything from code. All the UI, everything was generated and loaded dynamically. There was no layout, which is harder. I mean, you're programming, you're literally putting in pixel by pixel, running the game, seeing if it works, doesn't work, tweaking it again. It took forever. And the whole game was menus. The whole game is placement of things, which could have been done in a fraction of the time. And so part of me was just like, as a programmer first, especially back then, I was like, I don't want to worry about figuring all this out, which we should have done. Right. So that was a big thing, is that we didn't leverage the tools. We didn't understand the tools. And so we weren't even optimizing our workflow. So that was probably, from my perspective, a big one. And that's why, when we made our the first major game after this was Fashion Holiday, which our intent was, okay, and it was Kelsey that came up with this. He's like, you know what, we're wasting a lot of time. And so Fashion Holiday's main purpose was learn the engine correctly. And so that definitely took some time, which is kind of another reason why Sunset of Leivnos was so difficult. Like, there's a lot there and we weren't using any of it. So
a lot of growing pain.
Huge growing pains.
Learning curve and growing pains.
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted to come back to scope, which we slightly touched on, but there was things within that topic that I think we kind of also gave us some challenge on that. And
the size of the game became very unwieldy, and we kept going back and forth, adding things, paring things back, adding things, paring things back. And from an art perspective, that became very difficult for me because we were changing so much so often. And because I was creating things physically, it's very difficult to go back and edit. You can't, basically once it's done, it's done. So I would have to start from scratch, create an entirely new thing. So I have a lot of art that will never get used. And
so sad.
And
some
it's
of it's
really sad.
Too.
And so essentially it was, we would have to have a serious conversation about what was needed, what was happening. So when we were making art, we would have to, or discussing art, we would have to have a serious conversation about what was needed, what was actually going to be in the game. And like I said, that just kept changing so often that I was kind of stuck. I couldn't really move forward with a lot of things.
Yeah. So I think on that point, I think we had two parts of that, because I think the scope in conjunction with our inexperience.
Yes.
Because I feel like if we were to tackle it now, we'd probably be better equipped to do the whole thing. It was too big for our experience at the time. But you're right. Like, if you look at our file structure, we have, I think, up to version 4.
Yes.
Like, where we had version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, where every one of these versions was a large redesign.
And there's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but our ambition far outweighed our experience and our knowledge.
Yeah. And it's a really tough one. Like, if you're currently an indie game developer, like, this would be my biggest takeaway. And I have some friends who are in this sphere, and I kind of fight with them a little bit. I'm like, don't do it, man. Don't do it. And it's just like your heart wants it, right? And you almost have to learn it the hard way. And it was a hard lesson to learn. But my takeaway would be just, geez, start laughably small.
Well,
right? Because,
and that's something we did discuss over the course of our production was, to build something that was buildable and attainable and completable, but leave it open-ended so you can add those things that match your ambition. Yeah. And we did talk about that. We just weren't able to execute it.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I remember having these conversations, like, because we were like, what can we cut out? And we had these discussions where we're like, there's nothing. This is the game. And eventually, version 4 was actually fairly realistic, but it was just too late, because we at that point had, we just ended up getting a little bit too busy with life, right? And so, but I remember version 4, we paired out a bunch of stuff and we completely changed the battle system. And the interesting thing about it, I think, is that new version would have been really cool.
It still could be.
It's still, you know what? I'm not writing it out. Yeah. So anyways, just a little preview here, like because we're getting to War for Bryndor, and the whole idea here is, and we'll get a little bit more into detail of that, is that the War for Bryndor is the spiritual successor. Like you're saying, a lot of the art is wasted. That's true, but a lot of the art is here.
Is informed what we're doing.
Is either informed or directly,
yes,
right? Like, and the world it's our same world, it's our same characters, it's our same universe. Like, all of these things are still there. We didn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to that stuff. But before we get to that, I think there was one more point that you wanted to make on the challenges and related to that scope.
Right. Yeah. So I think we did kind of mess up a little bit, because we didn't really. Because we did a whole language component where there was a lot of languages, which really isn't.
So what do you mean by languages?
It was set up so that you could have, like, English and whatever, German, French, or whatever language it is, right? And so we built a whole tool to allow you to swap out the languages, and it would just all be programmed in there, and then it would just you select your language and it would change it in the game for you.
It was incredibly flexible and powerful, but we blew tons of time on it.
And then, so it took a long time to do, and it wasn't the game, right? So we spent all this time, and it wasn't the game at all. And I don't know. So if we would have, maybe finished the game and it blew up or whatever, then we could have done it at that time, because then it wouldn't have been a big deal. But
it was definitely putting the cart before the horse.
And it was the same sort of thing with we did a creation tool too, where you could edit the units and stuff. Well, the units weren't in the game yet, so like the monsters and the. Yeah. So they're not in the game, so what's the point of needing to edit them, right? So
yeah, and I think that kind of it's a little bit of all the things, but definitely we didn't have a clear set of, like, the minimum viable product. Yeah. And, like, the game kind of did run, but you couldn't really play it. Whereas, like, when we started working on War for Bryndor, it was the lesson learned, get there. Yeah, we had War for Bryndor playing in a week.
Yeah.
And so that's a big shift of focus, and that should have been back then. It was demoralizing at the end of the day, right? Like you'd work and work and work, and it didn't look like anything was happening because we're farting around with languages for literally months.
It's a whole separate tool, right? Like,
and it would never show up because it was just like, great, now you can put French in. None of it. We didn't have anybody who could translate any of it. We didn't have, nothing was on the shelf. So even if we had the tool done, we had no way to even make it happen anyway. So it's mistakes like that, right? Just not having a clear focus and getting to the point that really kind of, I think, sunk that ship. Okay, so a lot of this has obviously been not great, right? Like we had some people interested in the game, and that part was great. That was awesome to have some people interested in what we were doing. So I guess on that side of it, what kind of positive takeaways, like, you know, I hate to think that we wasted all of that time, like, and I don't think we did. I think we learned a lot, but what's your biggest takeaway? Like, okay, this was worth it because of.
I feel like we did a great job with our world building. That's one of the things that was most exciting for me and still is. And all of the work that we put into our basic world building, our character design, the world aesthetics, the design, the aesthetics, all of that is still being used in our new game. And so that absolutely was not wasted time. That was well worth it.
And we spent a lot of time doing that.
We did, and it informed everything that we did. So I think that was super successful.
And Cal, what about you? What's your takeaway?
Well, I think just us being able to recognize our failures, you know, like, so, you know, we've implemented those now in our new game and everything like that. And so it's made this one better, a lot better. We've definitely progressed more than, well, we weren't even close to
for sure
the last one, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I think those are very valuable takeaways for sure. On my end, I feel like if you just look back on a lot of that, it was skill building, right? Like, like there, you know, as we were not amateurs to begin with, we were doing a lot of things, even in a professional setting, but I just don't think I realized how much skill it takes, especially if we were trying something simpler. This is why I'm saying, do something simpler and build the skill at a bit by bit. Cause we built a lot of skill. And our goal was a lot of skill, required a lot of skill. And so I think in terms of skill building, that was good. I mean, even things like this podcasting, we did a lot of them. And I remember when we sat down the first few times, like you can go back and find the videos. I didn't take them down because they were fun. I've been watching them a little bit, but the first few were rough.
As they were everything.
Rough. And I remember being like, you know what, every video is just going to be a little bit better. But by the time we did, like, I think 18 episodes of the Dev Report, which is our develop one, and something like 10 of the Try Stuff one, which is kind of that miscellaneous, which we're kind of doing now. And they got pretty good. Like they're fun. The production value is okay. Like obviously it's still not fantastic.
Yeah, I think, you know, talking about lessons learned, I feel like we taught ourselves how to do this, and we accessed a lot of resources in order to try and do it well and at a professional level. But one thing we kept forgetting is that this type of game we were trying to make is normally a team of like 10, 15, 25 people, and we're 3 people, and trying to do all of the things is really hard. So that's why we keep saying, you know, make it small, make it simple, build up, because you have to remember what your capabilities are in terms of time. And we always overestimated that. Always. Because we forgot that, you have to live life and and do your day job, and you're going to be tired or sick
for sure,
or all of those things, that there's going to be a lot of roadblocks. So you really do have to try and make what you're creating manageable, within that
I would
scope.
say so. I was going to bring this up earlier, but the work ethic component.
Yes.
Like, I wouldn't say that we were lazy.
No.
But at the same time, my understanding of what it takes was not enough.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to, and these are tough pills to swallow. When we started learning, like, I started timing myself, I started estimating my time, I started looking at things, and I remember when we were trying to figure out, like, we were all really frustrated with Sunset of Leivnos. This is very near the end. I remember looking at our tasks and running calculations based on how much we were working, and because I started timing myself, and we had estimated it would take 10 years to finish.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
And we were like, this game is too big. We can't do it. And we were really exasperated, but it was like, we just can't do it. And so I think that, you know, the work ethic wasn't there yet. And so things like, okay, you can't play as many games, you can't watch as much TV, like, you have to make this
There's
a priority.
sacrifices, yeah absolutely. And whether or not you are willing and or capable of making those sacrifices in order to invest that time.
And at first I wasn't.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, I want to live my life doing this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so that was a multi-year transition of piecing this together to make it the priority and to not care as much about playing games, not care as much about seeing every single movie. Like, that, it was a transition for sure. So, and it was not a fun one. Like, that's a tough transition. So, like, now we're kind of at a point where,
well, it's habit building.
Right. Well, you're right. 100%.
It is a job, and you're basically signing yourself up for a second job if you've already got a job, and you have to realize that, like a job, you have to schedule that time, and it has to be 5 days a week, or 6 or 7 days a week, or 4 days a week, whatever it takes. And you're absolutely right. That's very difficult if you are only able to devote 1 or 2 hours a day to it.
Yeah, at that scale, you have to be making Pong.
Yeah.
Right, like that, and even more for Bryndor, like scope creep. Like, we started this game knowing this has to be a small game, and we started with a small game, and honestly, we still messed up.
Yeah,
like, you know, like, we're still learning these lessons. I think at this point, though, we're okay.
Yeah,
but we could have been done already if we wouldn't have done that, right?